in the spotlight, in the attention inside one of our marketing channels, just to focus on a bottom line reporting, increasing conversions. So I'm really good at making other people money, is what that comes down to.
Awesome.
Hey everybody, I'm Gary Palmer Jr., you're you, and together we are Minting Coins, your trusted source for crypto news, interviews, and what is happening in the open blockchain space, the open blockchain industry. And I'm very excited to introduce to you today, we have on the show Rowan Stone. He is the director of Horizen, formerly known as ZEN Cash, the director of Horizen, and Horizen has a token ZEN. Rowan Stone is also the owner of Alterchain, so he's an ex-miner who's now the full-time business development director at Horizen. So Rowan, thanks for joining us on Minting Coins, and how are you doing? How's the weather? Are you in Scotland right now?
You're very welcome. Yeah, I am in Scotland. Certainly am. The weather here is bizarrely warm, so it's winter here, but bizarrely, we have blue skies, so the past couple of days have been really, really nice. Really, really nice.
Nice. So I guess with all the global warming that may or may not exist, Scotland may turn into the new LA.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. We need, yeah. I think the entire world is due to get warmer, and Scotland is due to get colder. I think that's the way it's actually going to work out, so go figure.
Well, then I'm glad that the sun is shining on you today, and you know, and I suppose with what's happening at Horizen and all the news coming out from ZEN, it seems as if the sun has been shining on ZEN as well. Do you want to tell us about, I guess, how you learned about ZEN? How do you learn about, Horizen, and sort of how you got involved working as a business, the director of business development? Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, I had a mining operation previously. In a previous life, I was part of the senior management team for an oil and gas service company, and I quite quickly realized that that was not the lifestyle and not the kind of choice career for me. So I started looking at other solutions. I'd been mining cryptocurrency previously in a kind of part-time and kind of garage industry style. Filled up a spare room in my house, much to my partner's displeasure. And when I realized that things were taking off quite quickly and it became a lot more profitable, I started scaling that venture up, and that got me kind of into cryptocurrency full time. And through that, I learned of Horizen, originally Zencash, back in May 17 when it launched. And the project didn't have a fantastic start in life. They had a bit of a bumpy beginning with one of the main developers going a little bit rogue and making a bit of a hash of the code. And what really attracted me to the project was how well they dealt with that situation. It was all hands on deck. They had constant updates, and they really, really handled what was a really terrible situation in a brilliantly professional way. So that attracted me to the project. It made me point the hash that I had at the time at the network, and it made me jump into the community and see what I could do to try and help out. So I did a couple of really minor local meetups here in Scotland. And then Rob and Rosario and Rolf and all the rest of the team kidnapped me, and they've never let me go since. So I've been with the project, not since the beginning, but probably after the first sort of 3 or 4 months of it being operational.
Wow. So when you were mining ZEN, it was probably less than $1 or about $1 at that point, or did it cross the $2 threshold when you started mining ZEN?
I think it was around about $9 or $10 actually. Okay. So when the Bittrex listing took it to, I think originally about $10 or $15, and then it kind of settled at $8, and then it kind of skimped around the $10 mark for quite a while. And I think that's where I initially started mining. And then I initially started really buying kind of in earnest, probably more like $20, $25. It's probably where I put most of my stack in place.
Cool. And then so you probably have this, with all that mining experience, just understanding the economics behind that and the incentives behind that. And then Zen now has these secure nodes, and so what are your feelings on the secure nodes versus and I suppose it's like a proof of stake versus the mining and the proof of work?
Yeah, so a successful ecosystem needs lots of different stakeholder groups, if you like. And the analogy I quite like using is that building a kind of successful ecosystem is like building a house. So we started back in May 17 and we built the kind of foundations of a house. And those foundations were ZEN, the currency. And a house's foundations need to provide electricity and gas and water and all that sort of stuff. But the foundations for a cryptocurrency need to provide good accessibility, happy user experience, good liquidity, safe places to store it, so software wallets and hardware wallets. So the first kind of year or so, certainly from a business development perspective, the focus was infrastructure. It was foundational level, essential infrastructure to really start building things on top of. And then the secure node network came about because once the cryptocurrency is kind of solid and it's out there and it's being traded on exchanges and people have somewhere safe to keep it, the next big problem to tackle is both decentralization, but decentralization not just for the sake of it, decentralization to really ensure censorship resistance. And we do that by making sure we have as many copies of ZEN, the software, and the blockchain on as many different machines as we can around the world. So if you like, once we had the foundation in place, we then started building with bricks. And for me, the bricks were the secure nodes. That node network launched back in November 2017, if memory serves me right. And the original idea was to kind of get 4,000 or 5,000 nodes, nice and decentralized, ensure censorship resistance, add a new stakeholder group to the system. So if people don't have necessarily the hardware to do cryptocurrency mining or potentially the expertise to do it, we can leverage a different group of people, so the sysadmins of the world, and bring them into the system and incentivize them to run both hardware and our software on our behalf. So that's what we did. The system was much more successful than expected. Like I say, we were kind of hoping for 5,000, 6,000 nodes maybe. And within the first month, I think we achieved that goal. As of today, we have something like 22 or 23,000 secure nodes. And we also launched a second tier, so a slightly higher stake requirement, if you like, higher hardware requirements. And of those super nodes, we have something like 3,000. So the network's growing very quickly. And I think now it's pretty safe to say that we have the largest cryptocurrency node network in the industry.
That's really interesting. And so we have these different stakeholders, I think you're calling them. It sounds like we have, as far as Horizen and ZEN is concerned, we have miners doing proof of work. We have, node operators, these secure nodes, and secure nodes, and also the larger nodes as well operating. And then you guys have brought in system administrators and developers into the fold as another stakeholder into the community. And so with all these different stakeholders going into ZEN, and to get sort of, I suppose, the ease of use and the functionality and the simplicity and the design to ultimately bring on new users into the system, this has to happen through, typically for the greatest efficiency, this happens through a lot of centralization. Right, a couple leaders simmering to the top who really start giving direction that people start turning to and looking to. And so how is there decentralization in place right now with the leadership of Horizen? And can, a developer, either through their own desire or, a leader in Horizen through their own desire or through the force of the government, can someone force some sort of system update in the code, or to put something on or off the ZEN blockchain, or in terms of the core functionality of the code?
Sure. So, because we're a proof of work cryptocurrency, we use, albeit a modified version of Satoshi consensus, but regardless of the modification to Satoshi consensus, which we put in place to reduce the probability and increase dramatically the cost of a 51% attack, the consensus mechanism underneath is still in place. So if somebody owns the majority of hash, then they basically decide which path the project takes, theoretically. So at the moment, we are, as a team, reasonably centralized. I think there's no real argument to make against that. But what we're doing is we're systematically decentralizing every system within the ecosystem, and the team is not yet part of that, but the required steps are being taken. So at the moment, we are building a decentralized autonomous organization. We call it a treasury DAO. We entered into a partnership with IOHK, which is Charles Hoskinson's research and development company. So they're basically just a blockchain R&D company full of PhD level blockchain scientists. And they did a lot of game theory and a lot of research and development to figure out the best possible methodology to implement a voting mechanism, and a voting mechanism that kind of decentralizes a lot of the power that the current team hold. So the plan is to fully implement that. And we're going to take it a little bit further. So we want to really have a completely open environment where anybody can come in, anybody can participate, and anybody could put their hand up and say, hey, you know what, I can do business development better than Rowan. Here's my CV, here's my rate. And the community can then decide whether or not that person should be doing business development or if it should be me. So ultimately, yes, at the moment, the team is pretty decentralized, but the plan is to bring the entire team into a competitive situation where we have to bid for work, and anybody else is open to submit bids for work in a very similar way.
And so when the community decides on some of these proposals, who is that community made up of? Is that the node operators or is that not in place yet with the new decentralized governance model?
So the DAO isn't operational yet, but the plan is for every single ZEN holder to have a vote, essentially.
No matter how much ZEN you have.
Precisely. It'll be weighted. So for example, if you have one ZEN, your vote is clearly worth less than somebody with 500 ZEN. And that's currently the way it's going to work. So it's essentially one vote, one ZEN. However, we're still looking at game theory and we're still doing some research to really make sure that the system we put in place is as fair as possible and takes into account the people that have real skin in the game, whilst also ensuring that it's inclusive for people, for example, in less wealthy areas of the world to participate properly and to have their voices heard. So it's important for us to really be as inclusive as possible.
Okay, and so what's the timetable at this point? And I guess more importantly, the prioritization. Like, what are the major rocks on the table that Horizen wants to get accomplished in 2019, and where does the decentralized autonomous organization fall into that?
Cool. Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, going back to the house analogy, ZEN blockchain and the currency is the foundation. Our node network is then the bricks and the roof, if you like. What we're building now is a decentralized sidechain solution, and this is for two purposes. First purpose, it helps us scale effectively, so we can have applications running on Horizen, but we can do it in a way that doesn't clog the primary blockchain. If you think back to CryptoKitties, a few small, cute digital assets completely ground Ethereum to a halt. So we want to avoid that sort of thing happening. But the other thing it does is allows people from everywhere in the world to start building in an open way on top of Horizen infrastructure. And to use the analogy, it's like us being able to put infinite extensions on the house. So most of what we're building at the moment is dependent on this sidechain architecture. At the moment, we're working on the Sidechain SDK, the software development kit, aiming to get that out very, very soon. So that's in the next month, roughly. And then the first reference sidechain will be the Treasury DAO. So that's already been prototyped, and the guys are now ready to kind of get spun up and get that operational. So it is dependent on sidechains, but it is pretty high up the priority list as far as operational sidechains go for our project. So I don't want to commit to a definitive date, but certainly within the first half of 2019, we want to have a good stab at getting that system operational.
So the sidechain system is a major priority for 2019, and then the DAO will be one of the first implementations of the sidechain.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
And so these sidechains, they're going to be cryptographically connected to the main ZEN blockchain, or how are they connected and remain decentralized?
So they can send ZEN to and from. So they can communicate effectively with the main chain, but they can actually do it in a really elegant way. And I'm not the right person to do this system justice. Mm-hmm. However, the really interesting part is that we can have a sidechain operational that can communicate and send ZEN between main chain and sidechain, both forward and backwards. And we can do it in such a way where the main chain doesn't actually need to know the sidechain exists, which is really quite elegant. And yeah, I mean, if the main chain doesn't even know the sidechain exists, you don't get much more decentralized than that. We don't have to give permission. We don't have to give anything out to somebody that wants to come and do it. They can just come in, they can take the tools, and they can go away and make their own thing.
But it's somehow, if there's a one of these ZEN, and you might not be the best person to articulate all the details of this, and if we don't know that right now, then we can save that for the next talk. But the side chain is going to be, somehow governed by the rules of the ZEN blockchain, and connected to protect the peer-to-peer nature of that subsystem.
So yes and no. The real trick here is that sidechains can be designed and developed for any real purpose. So the white paper we've released already, the sidechain implementation actually uses a proof of stake mechanism rather than a proof of work. So it's not dependent on the main chain's proof of work. It has its entirely own consensus. And the real beauty of that is that we can have sidechains set up for very specific purposes. So it wouldn't make any sense to have a sidechain set up with proof of work if it requires, say, crazy fast transaction speed or something of that nature. Then clearly going a different route would be the better option. So this gives flexibility to really have a sidechain solution for a vast number of different use cases.
And those sidechains will require ZEN for those sidechains to operate, or no?
Yes, so ZEN will be the primary currency that can transfer back and forth. Absolutely, yes.
Got it. So as we were talking about at the beginning and before the show, and with the passion from the community and how they've been so responsive and proactive, and how they've had such a commitment to decentralization and this peer-to-peer technology, with some of the new things that we're talking about that we're getting into with Ethereum and smart contracts, there's a lot of comparisons to Ethereum and what Ethereum is doing and their connection with ZK snarks. So the question is, how does Horizen and ZEN fit into this world where Bitcoin may be about to scale exponentially with Lightning, where Ethereum may scale exponentially with the system upgrades that they're going through? Is Horizen going to get drowned out? Will these other systems simply take the features of Horizen with a greater network effect? Or what is the argument for Horizen continuing to exist as some of these other coins start reaching the escape velocity in the next bull market?
So I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where, for example, Bitcoin is the only coin and they've absorbed features from lots of other places. I think my vision of the future and where the industry is going is there'll be lots and lots of different projects, and we'll probably see a lot more than we have now. I mean, right now we have 2,200 cryptocurrency projects, something of that nature. I think that's going to continue expanding. And I think that every project is going to find their own little niche and really build out something that makes great sense for their user base. So for us, what we're trying to do is build a technology platform. We're trying to, my favorite analogy is one that Rob actually uses. And he describes it as building the Apple App Store of the cryptocurrency industry. And I think that's kind of a really nice way to put what we're trying to do. So we're trying to create an open and inclusive ecosystem where people can come in, organizations, individuals, entrepreneurs, anybody can come in and create something on top of a solid infrastructure that we have in place, capitalizing upon the technology we've already brought to market, and peg themselves out their own product in their own little section. So that's kind of what we foresee the future to be. Sidechains could be used for any number of things. We could have a tokenization platform. We could have a sidechain dealing purely just with really fast transactions for merchant type stuff, or we could have a sidechain set up as a point of sale type system. There's lots and lots of different ways we can use dedicated sidechains. And the beauty of making a technology platform is that, yes, we as the Horizen team, or as one of many competing Horizen teams, can bring products to market. But it doesn't need to be our products that are successful. The whole ecosystem is open up to anybody anywhere building their own products. And one such product that we announced reasonably recently was a partnership with a VPN provider. And a typical VPN would have, or a VPN provider would maybe have a few thousand endpoints around the world where they can route traffic. And the beauty of using the Horizen node network is that we have something like 25,000 nodes. So clearly a service like this would be opt-in. So not every node is going to want to become a VPN operator, but there's potential to have literally thousands of endpoints and a great potential for us to provide revenue directly from the sale of these VPN services to the node operators to supplement the revenue they already get by hosting hardware and having a copy of the blockchain on their computers. So yeah, I think the future is definitely bright. There's a million different ways we can take this. And I think the real solid strategy is to make it as multi-purpose as possible and really talk about it as a foundational protocol rather than making it very, very specific for one thing. But we're aiming for a killer app. That's the only way we're going to get mass adoption. I think every single product in the industry is pushing for that one killer app that will really get some traction. And hopefully that app will be built on top of Horizen.
Yeah, the new VPN partnership is really interesting, and the services that can provide in both different directions. Does Horizen have a financial stake in that VPN company? And if not, or if so, will other VPN companies be able to participate without restriction as providing VPN services through Horizen and ZEN?
Yeah, that's a great question. So do we have a financial stake? No, we don't. The Horizen, the ZEN Blockchain Foundation, which is the corporation behind Horizen, is a non-profit. And for that reason, there's no real interest there. We want to be impartial. We want to be agnostic. Will it be an open marketplace? Absolutely. If somebody else comes along with a VPN solution and a desire to build it into the node network, into the Horizen ecosystem, they are more than welcome to do so. I think that's probably the better way to go. I think having multiple competing VPN offerings on the network provides best value both for the community and for the market that's looking for services.
Yeah, and that's of course the answer that we're looking for, because if it's just one VPN, that seems as that could be a risk for different vectors of attack. So this is really cool. So we think it's really interesting, even with this world of Bitcoin and Ethereum and what's happening with the network effect of these other communities, really getting a lot of ground. We've seen how Horizen has gained significantly more land than a lot of these other projects, especially because Horizen seems to be delivering consistently with what it is that you guys are doing, what it is that the community is coming together and pushing forward, let it be the secure nodes or the super nodes or the different projects that are pushing this forward. So Horizen is seeking to build this platform, this Apple Store of blockchain technology. And just for extra clarity, is it going to be possible to exclude anybody? If there's someone who's a part of the system, someone who's creating content, someone that's taking advantage of the ecosystem of ZEN, is there going to be any way to exclude that one person, either from a community standpoint or from, a standpoint of centralization?
Possible, yes, but extremely unlikely. I mean, our preference, so for example, if somebody is taking advantage of the system, let's use that as the example. Our preference would be to engineer that vulnerability, if you like, that loophole that they're exploiting, to engineer that out rather than to hone in on a specific person and take specific action against them. If we went down that route, we'd be doing it all over the place with lots of individuals, and we're not in the policing game. We're here to create a fair system, and if we see an exploit, we'll do our best to resolve it, to engineer it out, to patch the fix, and prevent that person taking advantage again. It's a tricky one, though, because there are certain activities that we need to push back against, and we need to make it very clear that certain activities just aren't welcome on the Horizen ecosystem. So as a project, we need to take that stance and make it very, very clear, but not necessarily honing in on people and taking tangible action to prevent.
It seems to be, that this could be extrapolated into a longer, really interesting conversation, because if there's any reason, I mean, this is what people inside the industry say, in terms of the extreme, if there's any one reason that any one person could be, censored or have an action taken against them, then is that truly a decentralized ecosystem from the standpoint of the nonprofit, from the standpoint of the project, and from the legal liability of the people, like yourself and like Rob, who are making decisions to not apply centralization if there was a request made for them?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So the ZEN Blockchain Foundation is a legal entity registered in the US. It's a non-profit. We have to abide by US law, right? So there's nothing we can do about that. That's just the world we live in. We have to abide by law. Can we, for example, so one of the questions we get asked very regularly by people that don't understand, or usually people that don't understand what a ZK snark is and how it works. That's our privacy technology. Could you provide a backdoor, or could you find a way of showing private transactions? The real answer is no, absolutely not. There's no way. The only way that somebody can view a private transaction is if they're given the view key from the person that owns the private key. So there's no way, there's no backdoor or anything like that. There's no way for us to hone in on a particular activity or a particular transaction or anything of that nature. However, if somebody in the open, using transparent transactions, was doing something blatantly illegal, then we are bound by the same laws as everyone else in the world, and we would have to take some kind of action to that. But I'd argue that doesn't really make us centralized. Yes, at the moment we are centralized, so I'm not going to say that that's really a solid argument. We do have a team of people, and the team are the ones that are really driving progress here. And I think the reason that we're making consistent progress is because we have a centralized effort. We have guys working 7 days a week, absolutely nonstop, to try and make sure that Horizen is growing as an ecosystem, and to make sure that all the things that we talk about in interviews like this and put out onto social media actually gets done and brought to market on time. So for the moment, I think centralization is a necessity, and I think it's the reason why we're seeing a lot of success. But as I mentioned earlier, we are looking to engineer ourselves out of this equation, if you like, and get to a point where we are just one of many teams competing to build and develop the Horizen ecosystem.
It's definitely a fine balance, and I give you a lot of respect for walking that line. And it's going to be really interesting to see if and how a lot of these blockchain companies, how far they can pivot from semi-centralized or semi-decentralized to completely decentralized, if that's the end goal. I guess before we wrap up, I guess I'm interested. One last question. From your perspective as the Director of Business Development, who's your target audience that you want really involved with Horizen and the ZEN ecosystem, the ZEN community right now, versus who's your target audience maybe a year from now or 18 months from now? Because it certainly can't be the everyday user, who just doesn't have the technical proficiency to use even Bitcoin or Ethereum. And so who are you looking for now? Who are you looking for in 18 months from now? And how's that pivot going to happen?
So our typical users right now are the early adopters, the guys that are almost always technically proficient. And the reason for that is that we're still in a position where, as the whole industry, all of our customer facing, if you like, it's a weird way to put it, but essentially that's what it is. All of the customer facing, the user facing products suck. There's no two ways about it. There's very few that are user friendly. There's very few that you could pass to your neighbor or your family member and they'd be able to make sense of. We've put a big push on user experience. We fully realize that we're in a very small niche of people. We're in a niche of people that are technically proficient and value their privacy and understand why it's important to keep their personal information safe and secure. And I think we're servicing that group of people very well at the moment. But to have any real success, we either need to do one of two things. We either need to educate the mass market as to how important valuing your own personal data is and reclaiming that personal data rather than letting large monopolies monetize it. Or we need to make our products and services as slick and Apple-like as physically possible so that people can get the features that we're bringing to market, get the technology we're bringing to market, but not have to understand it, not have to use command line, and not have to do all the things that at the moment most people in this industry do have to do to get best use out of the tech. So right now, our user base are primarily technical proficient, privacy-focused people. And in the future, we very much want to target mass market. And to do that is going to be a bit of a kind of a double mission. But that's very much where we're focused.
Well, I'm right there with you with helping users understand not just open blockchain technology, but to understand digital security, digital privacy, and to bring this to more people to really help them take control over their data, their information, their wealth. And we really appreciate the work that you're doing and the work that the entire team and community is doing at Zencash. And so with that being said, is there anything else you'd like to say or message to the audience or direct people's attention to?
So for me, it's a case of please get involved. It's no point us building this glorious house if there's nobody inside it. So we need people to jump into the ecosystem. Check us out. Horizen.global is the current website. You'll see us on social media at Horizen Global on Twitter. Give us a like, a follow. Come along for the ride.
Excellent. And that website is horizen.global.
It certainly is, yes.
Excellent. Well, Rowan, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. This has been awesome. Learning more about your involvement with Horizen, seeing what is happening in the Zen community, and just helping us keep an eye on the progress you're making for the entire industry overall. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So that was pretty cool, and learning about Rowan and his involvement with Horizen and Zen. You know, Zen has really done some amazing work in the cryptocurrency space and the open blockchain space. And let's not forget that, you know, even though they've had their own issues, that they've created a lot of good code, a lot of good work that is open source out there. There's the improvements on the prevention of 51% attacks with the consensus algorithm and their response to the 51% attack. And there is just a lot of development, a lot of community, a lot of information that they're sharing with the world. And it really seems as if their heart is in the right place, that they're really focused on digital security, digital privacy, personal freedom and sovereignty. That's what Bitcoin is providing. That's what open blockchain technology is providing. And that's why we think Zen is pretty interesting. But we would love to know, what do you think? What do you think about Zen? What do you think about it versus Bitcoin versus Ethereum? And more importantly than these tokens and these technologies, what do you think about the communities that are coming together and making all this happen? Because really, when we're developing together, when we're working together and not tearing each other down, that's going to help all of us succeed. It's going to help all of us come together as opposed to, you know, the opposition watching us destroy ourselves. With that said, thanks for sticking around. Tap that like button, subscribe, hit that bell icon notification, comment below. And until next time, I'm glad that together we are minting coins.